Hello, I'm Micah Woods. Welcome to a very special Cart Rides with Micah. I was in Japan and I took a lot of cart rides and some K-truck rides too while I visited golf courses. I saw things like the two-green system and all different kinds of grass species. I visited 27 golf courses on this trip. Japan is in the transition zone. There are both cool and warm season grasses, some really interesting terrain on which golf courses are situated, some interesting equipment that's used, which I will also show you. We'll see the sights and the sounds, maybe a few tastes of golf course maintenance in Japan. So I'm going to show you the things that I think are really interesting and unique and a little bit distinctive compared with golf course maintenance and turf grass maintenance in other parts of the world. You may have seen a few photos of the sulky that goes behind a walking greens mower, a few faded images from the past of some well-known turf grass personalities. And this is really an interesting type of transport to get around with greens mowers. I took that photo not on this strip, and this image, this was at the end of summer in 2018 at the Ube 72 golf course. But on this trip, I got a chance to see the sulky in action, and I want to show this to you. So if you go to a maintenance yard and you see these are the sulkies, and they're not so common these days, but they used to be really widely used. In fact, when I was a golf course superintendent, I used those. The greenkeeper here at Ibaraki Golf Club, Mr. Nishizuka, was so kind that he could demonstrate this for me. And they've got a lot of grass to mow out there. They've got 36 holes, and 18 of those holes have 2 greens. So there are plenty of greens to mow every day. And Mr. Nishizuka demonstrated in the maintenance yard how you pull out the sulky, how you connect it to the back of the walking greens mower, then you start up the mower, sit down, and go for a ride. When I was a golf course superintendent in Chiba-ken, I used to ride these around when I went to mow greens, and it's a pretty fun way to get around. They move at a pretty good pace, and they work really well when you have a flat golf course. Ibaraki Golf Club, which is a little bit to the northeast of Tokyo, is on a relatively flat property with some really nice turf grass surfaces. And that's how you get around in a sulky. This is a beautiful golf course, and it has bentgrass greens and lots of red pine trees. In Japan, it's common to do testing of new varieties of bentgrass, and the new varieties of bent do really well compared to the old ones like Bentgrass. Now, there are sometimes you'll see closed signs. That's because this particular course has the 2-green system, so that green is closed. And that helps sometimes when you struggle in summer to have really good conditions. So you can close one of the greens, or you can use a fan for some air movement. This is slow motion fan. And these fans, actually, when I first saw them, I thought, what are these? They're nothing like the sub-air fans that I used to see in the United States. Well, they're actually the fans that are used on tee fields. And they're used on tee fields to blow the air to keep frost from forming. At another golf course, I saw a great way to get air movement. Just situate the green next to the bullet train line, and then when the Shinkansen bullet train goes by, that removes a huge amount of air, and you'll get a lot of air movement. But if you can't, that's more like a design issue. So if you can't design like that, then you can use the fans. The bullet trains are a great way to get around. When I visited all those courses on this trip, I took a lot of train rides. And if you ever go to Japan, you are likely to take some train rides too. There's a new class of service on the trains that go north and west from Tokyo, the Grand class, which is really nice. It's like business class seats and very comfortable and a very nice working environment and a nice ride. And plus, if you're on one of the longer Grand Class trips, they will serve you a nice little meal and some fine sake. You can work at your seat, or you can look out the window and enjoy the scenery and perhaps look for things like factories or look for driving ranges. That big net that you see there is a driving range. And you can also pass through the countryside and see mountains. There's a golf course up on the foothills there, so you can see rice fields, country villages, mountains. Oh, right. This is a cart ride video. So let's get back to that. I took a cart ride around the venue for this year's Japan Women's Open, which is in Western Japan in the Hokuriku region. And this course, Awara Golf Club, is really reminiscent of Kawana. Many of you will have heard of Kawana, which is often ranked in the world top 100. It's the best course in the world with zoysia greens. It hosts a ladies tournament. And speaking of ladies golf is very popular in Japan. I went in a convenience store. There were 8 magazines. There were 8 golf magazines. All of them had women on the cover. Awara Golf Club is going to be a great venue for the Women's Open. This is just a stunning site with pine trees and these massive sand dunes right next to the ocean on the western side of Japan. So this will be something that's going to be fun to see. I also went up into the mountains. This is in Nagano Prefecture. And up in the mountains, you get a little bit different kind of grass. You get no-shiba fairways generally and bentgrass greens because of the high elevation. This is a course near Mount Asama, and this course has really interesting grassing because it doesn't even have pure no-shiba, which is zoysia japonica, in the fairways. It has a mix of zoysia japonica and cool season grass. Now, I happened to play this course when I visited, and I made a nice birdie, and then I made another birdie. It was pretty fun to make those birdies. If you follow me on Instagram or on Twitter, maybe you saw some of those already. So this course has bentgrass greens, and then in the rough, that is fine fescue, and then the coarser bladed grass is zoysia japonica. No-shiba is what it's called in Japan, and no-shiba does really well in the mountain type of conditions that are a little bit cooler than what you'd see at sea level. Those are zoysia japonica seeds, and it was interesting for me to see the management of a surface that even in the fairway, they have a mix of cool and warm season species. So this is in the fairway, and if you look down, you can see there is a base of zoysia japonica, and it's mixed in with some cool season grass to fill in the voids in between the zoysia plants. So I thought this was pretty interesting to see. I'm always on the lookout for interesting kind of grasses and interesting grass combinations. And this one, a zoysia japonica base mixed with some cool season species, both in the rough and in the fairways, was pretty cool. Wasabi soft cream. So good. Fresh grown on the farm, fresh grated on my soft cream. My. You'll also find some wasabi up in the mountains, and you'll also find a lot of ramen. And so sometimes we're stopping for lunch and going out and getting a quick meal of ramen, which is a fast thing to eat before we go on to visit the next property. Japan has a lot of magazines, and there are 2 trade magazines, Monthly Golf Management and Golf Course Seminar, that have a lot of information. And some of the information that I write about in Golf Course Seminar has to do with weather, because Japan has challenging weather. Now, here's another reason for the 2-green system. This green's closed because if you ever have a landslide on your golf course, and this course in Fukuoka Prefecture had a lot of rain, they had a landslide, the part of the mountain came down onto the green, you can close that green. So there's another reason for the 2-green system. It was a pity to see all of this damage. This course just got hammered during the rainy season and also had some massive washouts on some of the fairways where the drain lines just could not handle the flow of water that was coming through. And it just, a huge amount of erosion and just blasted away a bit of the side of the mountain there. So in Japan, a lot of the courses are built in mountainous terrain, and that makes for some challenging maintenance because you'll have a bit more wildlife there. This is boar damage. Some of you will have seen my previous videos where I've focused on the fences that a lot of golf courses have around the outside of the property to keep the boars out, or we've looked at other ways to control boars. And yeah, if you have wild hogs coming out on the course, they just turn up the turf and they can do some pretty serious damage. At the end of the rainy season, I also saw some dollar spot. This is dollar spot on a zoysia tea, and it's not uncommon to see that. It's a bit uncommon to see so much slime mold. I saw on one golf course in Hyogo Prefecture a astounding variety of slime mold of all different colors, also on a zoysia grass fairway. And this is common in high temperatures and in high humidity. I also saw some dollar spot on Bentgrass, and here's a course on a hill looking down over the city of Osaka, and you get some stunning views looking down to the city. You actually can see down to the Itami airport and watch the planes taking off frequently as they go. This is the main domestic airport for the city of Osaka, and they go all over the country, and a lot of them going to Tokyo. Now, even with all the challenging conditions and the challenging weather, I saw some really great bentgrass surfaces, and I was intrigued at this golf course to see at their nursery how they pull out the plugs and then they just let the grass, they fill the holes with sand and just let the grass grow right back over. And that works pretty good. Instead of cutting big pieces of sod and destroying the nursery, if you cut the plugs on a spacing and then you just let it grow back in, and just keep it top dressed and smooth, you can have grass that you can use again. This is a 36-hole course. This is a custom irrigation control system. There's a lot of these, and they are a challenge because generally the companies that built these are for the king and the queen course, the out course and the in course. So you've got your first 9, second 9. Generally, the companies that built these aren't in business anymore. That's the Yamakasa Festival, which I had a chance to go to the last day of that early in the morning. There's water splashed, a bit of chaos, but when everybody's working hard and making things happen and moving a very heavy float around, and that kind of reminds me of irrigation in Japan in a way, because the irrigation systems tend to not be so easy to work with. So you get things like that custom irrigation system. So I thought it was interesting to see the Yamakasa Festival with all that water splashing and all that hard work. It just reminded me a bit of the difficulties of irrigating turf grass in Japan. Now, I also spent the last week or 10 days in Japan collecting data all over the country, and I was collecting data about playability because I wanted to check. This is a zoysia green, and Japan has lots of golf courses with zoysia greens, so it's kind of new in America to have zoysia greens, but in Japan, they've had zoysia greens for 100 years. And in Southeast Asia, it's quite common to have zoysia greens. So I visited courses with zoysia greens, with Ultradorf bermudagrass greens, and with Bentgrass greens. And I took some measurements about playability because I'm trying to understand more and just add to my already large data set of measurements of these different grasses, and also doing some stuff in the soil. And oh, there's another bullet train. This is a golf course in Osaka, and I also was glad to visit there, collect data from their champion greens. They've got Bentgrass greens and champion greens, also 2-green system, and they've got the bullet train passing by there also. But you have to look quick because it goes by fast. On this data collection project, we also collected soil samples. One of the things that we're looking at with soil samples is different sampling methods and different sampling depths. And as I traveled around, I also got a chance to see how different golf courses are maintained in terms of crew sizes and the different types of machines that are used, and had some really great conversations with the greenkeepers about how they maintain the grass and how they deal with the challenging climate in Japan, because Japan has a lot of rain and it's really hot. And then after the rainy season, it stops. Of course, it's year-round golf, and I've mentioned frost covers before. You see how these greens have a portion that's unfrosted. These are like 200 square meters in size. So those are what they look like in the winter if you use them. This golf course gets 65 to 70,000 rounds of golf per year. So in the winter, you're looking at thousands of rounds, and they are playing on frosted turf. They don't have any frost delays. They just don't see damage. So I had some conversations about frost, and that is something that I will continue to talk about because I find it so fascinating. Another grass that I was surprised to see was Stenotaphyrum secundatum, which in the US is called St. Augustine grass. In Australia, that one is called buffalo grass. I also visited a really pretty course in Yamaguchi that had a lot of Bahia grass, or Paspalum notatum. And you can see from here over to this bridge that separates, and this little strait that separates the island of Honshu and the island of Kyushu. So that is a really beautiful golf course, which also has the 2-green system. And oh my, there's another bullet train. Well, that will certainly get some air moving across that green. So that was kind of the end of our data collection project, and I got all kinds of samples, a lot of soil samples, a lot of tissue samples, and getting those all tested at Brookside Labs. And these particular samples, you can see there's an aeration hole filled with sand. This is a OM246 sample, and I took OM246 samples from a lot of golf courses, so that's also part of this project, looking at the total organic material. And I also had the chance to see the really cool sand top dressing process that's used in Japan. They if you're using this type of sand, you get it in 1-ton bags, so it's really easy to keep track of how much you're working with. And then you can just use a crane to hold the bag out over the top dresser. You get these really nice dried sand, and you can seal the bag with a little knot. And it's kind of like an hourglass or something in terms of letting the sand pass through. And then you'll just seal the bag, and then when you need to put more sand again, you will just untie your knot, and there you go. So that was really cool to see that sand top dressing process. I've made a video that shows how I measured what the sand top dressing rate was, and this is something that I recommend for everybody to do. So I got to see a lot of really good turfgrass surfaces, collect a lot of samples from them, and have some really good cart rides.